How are you guys doing? Today is Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021. I'm James Sims, a proud Atlanta native, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an Elite Championship profile for the 2021 Atlanta Braves team, organization, especially in this year where Hank Aaron passed away, one of the greats of the game, who, other than Barry Bonds, has hit the most home runs in MLB history. And this is a Braves team that has been sitting at 500 for a good chunk of the year. They lost their best pitcher, Mike Soroka, at the beginning of the year. They lost their best hitter, or arguably their best hitter, Ronald Acuna, midway through the season. They acquired they acquired Eddie Rosario, and they acquired Jorge Soler in the middle of the season, and they helped bulk up their roster. Then they made a nice run for the playoffs. And just to give a little bit of background as to how the Atlanta Braves got in here, they would eventually end up winning the National League East, finishing 6.5 games ahead of the second place Philadelphia Phillies. They were so far ahead, of course, that they didn't even finish playing 162 games. They played 161 games, and they went into the playoffs with a 3 seed ready to face off against the Milwaukee Brewers. And once, of course, they made it to the Brewers, by that point, the wild card series had been played. And in the wild card, the Dodgers beat the Cardinals, and then the Red Sox beat the Yankees to trim the playoff seed, the field, from 10 to 8 teams. Once they made it to the division series, the Atlanta Braves would face off against the Milwaukee Brewers. But since the Brewers had a better record, the Brewers had home field advantage for the first 2 games of the series. In Game 1, the Milwaukee Brewers would actually take the series lead. Their first runs would come in the bottom of the 7th off of a 2-run home run from Rowdy Tellez. And then Joc Pederson's solo home run would be the only run that the Braves scored. But following that game, the Brewers would take a 2-1 series lead over the Atlanta Braves. Jumping into Game 2 in Milwaukee, the Atlanta Braves would end up beating the Braves. They would end up beating the Brewers 3-0. The win was given to Max Fried. Fried struck out 9 batters in 6 innings. And then looking at how the Braves scored in Game 2, their first run would come off of a single from Freddie Freeman, their elite first baseman. And then Ozzie Albies would have an RBI double that would eventually bring Freddie Freeman home in the top of the 3rd, making it 2-0. And in the top of the 6th, Austin Riley, the Atlanta Braves third baseman, would hit a solo home run to make it 3-0. Following that game, the series would be tied at 1, as the next 2 games would be played in Atlanta, and if necessary, Game 5 would have been played in Milwaukee. In Game 3 in Atlanta, the Atlanta Braves would end up beating the Brewers 3-0 for the 2nd straight game. The only scoring play happening in the bottom of the 5th off of a 3-run home run from one of their new acquisitions, Joc Pederson, from the reigning World Series champs, LA Dodgers. And then for the Braves, their pitching hero was Ian Anderson. He would strike out 6 batters and allowed no earned runs in the 5 innings that he pitched. And of course, Will Smith picked up his 2nd save. Following this game, the Braves were up 2-1. And going into Game 3, they would go to Atlanta. And with the Milwaukee Brewers' backs against the wall, the Milwaukee Brewers would score the first 2 runs of the game. In the top of the 4th, Omar Narvaez's single would make it 1-0, and Lorenzo Cain's single would make it 2-0. In the bottom of the 4th, Eddie Rosario's 2-run single would make it 2-2. In the top of the 5th, the Brewers would take a 2-run lead as Rowdy Tellez hit a 2-run home run. Those would be the last 2 runs that the Brewers would score of the season, as Joc Pederson's ground out in the bottom of the 5th would make it 4-3 Milwaukee. Travis d'Arnaud's single in the same inning would tie the game up at 4, and then it would be a cherry on top home run to center field from the Atlanta Braves elite first baseman Freddie Freeman. That was his first home run of the series. And of course, with this win, the Atlanta Braves would advance to the National League Championship Series, having beat the Milwaukee Brewers 3-1 in a best-of-5 series. And in the National Championship Series, they would have to face off against the defending World Series champs, LA Dodgers, after the Dodgers came back and beat the San Francisco Giants 3-2 after being down 2-1. And looking at how that matchup fared, because the Dodgers were the wild card seed despite having a better record in the regular season, the Atlanta Braves would have home field advantage. So going into game 1 in Atlanta, the Atlanta Braves would end up scoring the very first run of the National League Championship Series after Corey Knebel threw a crazy pitch. Eddie Rosario would score. In the top of the second, Chris Taylor's single would bring A.J. Pollock home, tying the game at 1. In the top of the fourth, the Dodgers would take their very first lead of the National League Championship Series, and I would argue their only lead of the National League Championship Series. Following that, Austin Riley would hit a solo home run to tie the game up at 2 in the bottom of the fourth in the same inning. In the bottom of the ninth, it would be Austin Riley who struck again. His RBI single, his walk-off RBI single would bring Ozzie Albies home to give the Braves game 1. With the Braves holding a 1-0 series lead, they would hold game 2, and they would pick up a very clutch win in game 2 in order to pick up a serious advantage over the Dodgers. In the top of the first inning, Corey Seager, the Dodgers' elite shortstop, would hit a 2-run home run to make it 2-0 LA. Jock Peterson, the former LA Dodger, would hit a 2-run home run in the bottom of the fourth to tie the game up at 2. The game would be tied at 2 until the top of the seventh, where Chris Taylor's 2-run double would make it 4-2 LA. In the bottom of the eighth, Ozzie Albies' single would bring Eddie Rosario home, shortening the Braves' deficit to 1. And then Austin Riley's double would tie the game up at 4, bringing home Ozzie Albies. And then in the bottom of the ninth, the Braves would walk off again as Eddie Rosario's single would end up getting deflected off of Corey Seager, bringing Dansby Swanson to the plate. And with that win, the Atlanta Braves would take a 2-0 series lead off of their first 2 games in Atlanta, which is, of course, they got the most out of their home field advantage. So the next 3 games would be played in Los Angeles. And, of course, for this, jumping out to game 3, the Dodgers would actually pick up their very first game of the series as they had to come from behind to beat the Braves. In the bottom of the first, the Dodgers would score the very first 2 runs of the game off of a 2-run home run from Corey Seager. The Braves would end up scoring 4 runs in the 4th inning. Jock Peterson's single would make it 2-1 LA. Adam Duvall's single would tie the game up at 2. Dansby Swanson's single would make it 3-2 Atlanta, and then Eddie Rosario would walk with the bases loaded, bringing Adam Duvall to the plate, making it 4-2 Braves. In the top of the 5th, Adam Duvall's single made it 5-2 Atlanta, and then the Braves would hold a 3-run lead until the bottom of the 8th, where the Dodgers' elite outfielder Cody Bellinger would hit a 3-run home run to tie the game up at 5, and then it would be an RBI double from their elite outfielder Mookie Betts to make it 6-5 and give the Dodgers what they needed to win Game 3. And following this win, the Atlanta Braves still held a 2-1 series lead. Going into Game 4 in Los Angeles, the Atlanta Braves would end up beating the Dodgers 9-2. For the Braves, their first relief pitcher Drew Smyly would pick up a good amount of that slack, as he would allow only 2 earned runs in 3.1 innings pitched, striking out 2. Looking at how the Braves scored here, they would score their first 2 runs in the top of the second as Eddie Rosario and Adam Duvall would both hit solo home runs to make it 2-0. In the top of the third, Freddie Freeman would hit the 3rd solo home run of the game to make it 3-0. And then Jock Peterson's RBI single in Dodger Stadium would make it 4-0 Braves. In the top of the 5th, Adam Duvall's sacrifice fly would bring Ozzie Albies home to make it 5-0 Braves. In the top of the 5th, the Dodgers would score their only 2 runs of the game off of a 2-run single from A.J. Pollock. In the top of the 9th, Freddie Freeman would hit a ground rule double to bring Dansby Swanson home. And then, of course, as another cherry on top, Eddie Rosario would hit a 3-run home run to, of course, give the Braves the 9-2 win over the Dodgers. He eventually went on to win the National League Championship Series MVP. But, of course, this was one of the hits in which he earned it right there. Following this win, the Braves had a 3-1 series lead over LA. And going into Game 5, which would be the Dodgers' last game that would be played in LA, with their backs against the wall, the Dodgers would end up beating the Braves 11-2 to keep their playoff hopes alive. The Braves scored their 2 runs in the top of the first inning off of a 2-run home run from their elite first baseman Freddie Freeman. That would be the only 2 runs they scored all game. After that, after Joe Kelly pitched, it would be a combination. It would be an ensemble cast pitching performance from the Dodgers that held the Braves to only 5 hits all game. After the Braves took a 2-0 lead in the top of the first in Game 5, A.J. Pollock would hit a solo home run to make it 2-1 Braves, and then Chris Taylor's 2-run home run would make it 3-2 Dodgers. In the bottom of the third, Chris Taylor's single would make it 4-2 LA. In the bottom of the fifth, Chris Taylor would hit his second home run of the game, which would end up making it 6-2 LA. Chris Taylor would then hit a solo home run 2 innings later to make it 7-2 LA. So, of course, Chris Taylor would go off to have a virtuoso performance. He went 4 for 5 with 6 RBIs and 3 runs. I rarely mention other players' the stats on the players of the losing team, especially in a championship profile, but Chris Taylor had that amazing of a performance. In the bottom of the 8th, Trey Turner's RBI single made it 8-2 LA, and then A.J. Pollock's 3-run home run would make it 11-2 Dodgers, as this would be the Los Angeles Dodgers' final win of the 2021 campaign. Following this, Game 6 would be played in Atlanta, as of course Atlanta had home field advantage, and the Braves would end up beating the Dodgers 4-2. For the Atlanta Braves, most of the pitching went to Ian Anderson. He allowed only 1 earned run in 4 innings. Tyler Madzik would pitch he would pitch the 7th and the 8th inning to, of course, seal it for the Braves. But looking at how the runs were scored, in the bottom of the first, the Braves struck first with a 1-run ground rule double from Austin Riley that brought Ozzie Albies home. In the top of the 4th, the Dodgers tied it up with a single from their elite outfielder, Cody Bellinger. In the bottom of the 4th, the NLCS MVP, Eddie Rosario, would hit a 3-run home run to put the Braves up 4-1. And then A.J. Pollock's 1-run double would make it 4-2, and the Dodgers would just simply be unable to catch up with the Braves. And following this, the Braves would advance to the World Series, where they would face off against the Houston Astros, who made it to this round after defeating the Boston Red Sox in 6 games. And the Houston Astros had home field advantage going into this matchup because they had a better record, or I believe it's because of the All-Star game. Don't quote me especially on that. But going into Game 1, the Atlanta Braves would strike first, as Jorge Soler would hit a solo home run on the very first at-bat of the World Series to get it started. He did eventually go on to be the World Series MVP. Austin Riley would double up in the top of the first, as his RBI double would bring Ozzie Albies home to make it 2-0 Atlanta. In the top of the second, Jorge Soler would get out on a fielder's choice, but eventually Travis d'Arnaud would eventually score to make it 3-0 Atlanta. In the top of the third, Adam Duvall's 2-run home run will make it 5-0 Braves. Those will be the first 5 runs of the game before the Astros scored. Finally, as Chas McCormick's fielder's choice would bring Kyle Tucker home, making it 5-1 in favor of Atlanta. In the top of the 8th, Freddie Freeman's sac fly would bring Dansby Swanson home to make it 6-1 Braves, which would basically put it out of reach for the Astros. Carlos Correa's ground out would eventually bring Yordan Alvarez home to make it 6-2 Braves. And following that, the Braves would escape Houston with a 1-0 series lead. And then going into Game 2, the Astros would even up the series with a 7-2 win right before they went to Atlanta. In the bottom of the first, Alex Bregman would score on a sacrifice fly to bring Jose Altuve home to make it 1-0 Astros. In the top of the second, the Braves would tie the game up off of a solo home run from Travis d'Arnaud. In the bottom of the second of that same inning, Jose Siri's single would make it 2-1 Astros. Martin Maldonado's single would make it 4-1 as he brought Jorge Siri and Yuli Gurriel home. Michael Brantley's single would make it 5-0 Astros, and that was the bottom of the second. In the top of the fifth, the Braves would score another run off of an RBI single from Freddie Freeman. In the bottom of the sixth, a fielder's choice from Yuli Gurriel would eventually bring Yordan Alvarez home and make it 6-2 Astros. And in the bottom of the seventh, as a cherry on top, they would get a home run from their elite second baseman, Jose Altuve, to make it 7-2 Astros. And following this win, this would even up the series 1-1, as this series would fly to Atlanta for games 3, 4, and 5. In Game 3, the Atlanta Braves would shut the Astros out and win it 2-0. The win on their pitching side went to Ian Anderson. He allowed no earned runs and no hits. He walked 3 batters and struck out 4 in 5 innings pitched. And, of course, Will Smith picked up the save. Looking at how the runs were scored, in the bottom of the third, the Braves scored their first run off of an RBI double from Austin Riley. And then Travis d'Arnaud's solo home run would make it 2-0 Braves, though that would be all the scoring needed for the Braves to take a 2-1 series lead. In Game 4, the Braves would end up beating the Astros 3-2 in a very decisive game where the Astros struck first. In the top of the first, Carlos Correa grounded out, bringing Jose Altuve to the plate to make it 1-0 Astros. And Jose Altuve's solo home run in the top of the fourth made it 2-0 as the Astros it looked as though the momentum was in their favor to even the series up. In the bottom of the sixth, Austin Riley's single would bring Eddie Rosario to the plate to shorten the Braves' deficit to 1. In the top of the seventh, the Braves tied it up with a solo home run from Dansby Swanson, and then immediately after, Jorge Soler's solo home run would put the Braves up 3-2, and that would give the Braves what they needed to take a 3-1 series lead after 4 going into Game 5, which could be the clincher. With the Astros back against the wall in Atlanta, the Astros were able to put together a 9-5 win, despite the Braves hitting a grand slam in the bottom of the first from Adam Duvall, making it 4-0. Alex Bregman's double would make it 4-1. And Martin Maldonado's sac fly would make it 4-2. In the top of the third, Carlos Correa's double would make it 4-3, and Yuli Gurriel's ground out would tie the game up at 4. In the bottom of the third, Freddie Freeman's solo home run would be the Braves' 5th and final run that they score before the Astros scored the final 5 runs of the game. Martin Maldonado would walk in the top of the 5th, and then Marwin Gonzalez's 2-run single would put the Astros up 7-5 as they hit the midway point of the game. At the top of the 5th, the Astros took an 8-5 lead off of a Martin Maldonado single, and then Carlos Correa's single on the top of the 8th made it 9-5 Astros. Following this win, the Astros they trailed the Braves 3-2, as the Braves were still 1 game away. And with the Astros back against the wall in their home stadium in Houston, the Atlanta Braves would end up winning Game 6, taking it all 7-0 to shut the Astros out and pick up a very big win. The win for the Braves would go to their starting pitcher, Max Fried. He allowed no earned runs and only 4 hits in 6 innings as he struck out 6. With this win, he was 1-1 in the World Series, and Tyler Matzek would pitch the next 2 innings, striking out 4 in those 2 innings. Will Smith would pitch the final inning, allowing only 1 hit. And then looking at how the runs were scored, in the top of the third, it would be a 3-run home run from Jorge Soler, who, as I said, would eventually go on to be the World Series MVP. At the top of the 5th, Dansby Swanson would hit a 2-run home run to make it 5-0 Atlanta. Freddie Freeman's RBI double would make it 6-0 Atlanta. And in the top of the 7th, the final run scored in the 2021 MLB season was a solo home run from the 2020 MLB MVP, Freddie Freeman. And as a result, the Atlanta Braves would go on to win their very first title since 1995. It is their 4th total title as a championship, or their fourth total World Series as an organization. They won in 1914. They won in 1957, 1995, and 2021, the second time that they've won as the Atlanta Braves in the city of Atlanta. And it was a wild ride for them to make it all the way from the beginning to here. And with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to this piece. I want to thank the MLB and ESPN websites for giving me all the facts and figures that I needed for this episode. And of course, I'm sorry if I butchered a lot of the MLB names throughout the season. Of course, it has been very tough, but I mean, eventually I do plan on getting them all right. I am glad that this is the second full season that I've been able to cover, especially with the Elite, because I started on opening day right as sports started up in the middle of the quarantine, and it's been a wild journey to now, and I just can't wait to continue going, really. This has been an amazing journey for the Atlanta Braves, and this is a very good team that may be primed to win it next year. Thanks once again for listening to all 21 minutes of this piece, and once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I will come back tomorrow on Thursday, November 4th, for another episode of the Elite. So until then, thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you then. Peace out.